Have you ever felt that strange emptiness right after you achieved something you thought would finally complete you? You crossed the finish line, got the promotion, moved into the dream apartment, or stood beside the person you longed for. For a moment, the world seemed to pause in triumph. But then almost immediately something inside you whispered, "What's next?" That fleeting joy faded like smoke, leaving you staring at a new horizon, hungrier than before. It's as if every victory you grasp slips through your fingers, demanding another chase. You run harder, stretch further, climb higher, but the summit keeps receding. Each new goal promises the end of your restless striving, yet each one simply resets the cycle. And you, always reaching, never arriving, begin to wonder if this entire race is nothing more than a mirage. Imagine this. You're on a vast treadmill that never stops. Each time you manage to sprint ahead, the machine speeds up, demanding more of you. You sweat, you fight, you force yourself to believe that exhaustion means progress. But deep down, you feel the absurdity, because no matter how fast you run, you're still in the same place. Isn't this what life often feels like? A chase with no finish line, a hunger with no lasting satisfaction? What if the very act of chasing dreams is the trap? What if the promises of fulfillment you've been taught to pursue are the very reasons you feel empty, restless, and haunted? Society tells you that setting goals, chasing ambitions, and never stopping until you make it is noble. But have you noticed how, even when you get what you want, the satisfaction is always smaller than the anticipation, weaker than the craving, and shorter than the struggle that led to it? Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "All striving springs from want, from deficiency, from dissatisfaction with one's condition." In other words, every time you long for something, you're already confessing to yourself that you are incomplete, that something is missing. And so your life becomes an endless confession of lack. Every goal you set tells you, again and again, that you are not yet enough. Doesn't this realization sting? That what you call progress might actually be a subtle prison? That what you call ambition could be chains dressed in gold? You've been taught to believe that dreams will free you. But look closely. Are they liberating you, or are they binding you to an invisible wheel of craving, like a modern Sisyphus pushing the stone of desire, only to watch it roll down again? Think about the nights you lay awake, imagining what your life would look like. If only you had more money. If only you had more recognition. If only you reached that next milestone. And yet, even when you arrive at those milestones, the hunger mutates. It invents new if-onlys. Have you noticed that? The craving never dies. It only changes costumes. So ask yourself, what is this force inside you that keeps dangling new dreams just beyond your reach? Why do you never feel truly finished, truly whole? What if the cruelest illusion of all is not that dreams can fail, but that even when they succeed, they cannot deliver the peace you secretly seek? This is the great paradox you now face. The more you chase, the more miserable you become. And yet, without chasing, who are you? What remains? Hold on to that question, because the answer will take you deeper than you've ever dared to go. Why does this treadmill exist at all? Why are you condemned to chase one shimmering dream after another, as if some unseen hand keeps dangling the bait just far enough ahead? You might think it's only personal weakness, your own impatience, your lack of gratitude, your inability to be content. But look deeper, and you'll see this restlessness is not an accident of your character. It is the very structure of your existence, carefully sculpted by both your biology and your culture. Psychology tells you that the human brain evolved not for happiness, but for survival. The ancient circuits of your mind are designed to notice danger, to seek advantage, to compare yourself with others. That restless feeling inside you, that insatiable, not yet enough, was once the engine of survival. It drove your ancestors to hunt more, gather more, climb higher, and compete harder. Without it, they would have starved, perished, or been overtaken by rivals. This ancient hunger whispers through your blood. Move, strive, seek more. But in the modern world, where survival is no longer at stake in every breath, that same drive mutates into chronic dissatisfaction. Neuroscientists describe it as the hedonic treadmill, the dopamine spike you get when anticipating a reward is always higher than the pleasure you feel once you receive it. That's why the craving feels intoxicating, while the having feels strangely flat. You've been wired to overvalue the dream and undervalue the arrival. Do you see the trap now? Schopenhauer understood this long before dopamine was discovered. He wrote that life is a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. Pain when you are striving and don't yet have what you desire. Boredom once you achieve it, and the thrill fades. You've felt this, haven't you? That emptiness after the goal is achieved is not an accident. It is the law of the will itself. You live suspended between torment and restlessness, and each time you escape one, you are handed over to the other. And then comes society, an amplifier of your inner torment. From childhood, you were told to dream big, to chase success, to build a life worth admiring. Advertisements, education, even casual conversations conspire to equate worth with achievement. What do you want to be when you grow up? The question that plants the seed that who you are now is not enough. Everywhere you turn, you are reminded that life is a race, and if you pause, you'll be left behind. Thinkers like Erich Fromm pointed out how modern culture transforms human beings into marketing personalities, always selling themselves, always comparing, always branding, as if existence itself must be justified by performance. You've been conditioned to see yourself not as a being, but as a project under constant construction. No wonder you can never rest. Rest feels like failure. But there is an even darker layer beneath this. Each new dream you chase is not really chosen by you. Consider this. Do you truly want what you want? Or have your desires been implanted in you by the endless chorus of culture, family, and peers? When you imagine the house, the career, the relationship you crave, how much of that picture is genuinely yours? And how much is borrowed from images you've absorbed unconsciously from screens, stories, and others' expectations? Nietzsche once warned, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." In a similar way, even when you rebel against society's ideals, you remain chained to them. You may reject one dream, but another takes its place, born from the same structure of comparison and lack. Even rebellion can be captivity in disguise. Isn't this why, no matter what you achieve, the satisfaction evaporates? Your very sense of identity is tangled in the chase. To stop running feels like erasure, like death. And yet to keep running is to suffer. What kind of choice is that? Either way, you lose. You see now that this problem is not simply yours. It is ancient, biological, cultural, and existential. You are carrying a weight you never asked for, the machinery of desire, reinforced by society, shaping you into a creature forever unsatisfied. And the cruelest part is this machinery convinces you it is freedom, that to stop striving would be to betray yourself. So you keep running, even as your spirit aches. You keep dreaming, even as each dream betrays you. And quietly, beneath the surface, the consequences of this hidden structure grow darker than you realize. Because what happens when an entire life, an entire society, is built upon this restless striving? What does it do to your relationships, your health, your soul? What does it mean for a culture when no one can rest, when everyone is chasing and no one ever arrives? That is the shadow you must now confront. You may believe that this restless striving is just a private burden, something you carry quietly in your heart. But look closer, and you'll see its fingerprints everywhere in the structure of your days, in the fabric of your society, in the silent exhaustion of those around you. This hunger does not stay inside you. It radiates outward, shaping the world in its own image. Think of how your relationships are colored by it. Have you ever noticed how even love becomes infected by striving? You want a partner not just for companionship, but for validation, for proof that you are desirable, worthy, successful. Your connection becomes measured, weighed, compared against ideals. Instead of resting in presence, you begin to treat even intimacy as another achievement, another box to check, another performance to maintain. Is it any wonder that so many relationships fracture under the weight of unspoken expectations? Then think of your work. The office is perhaps the purest temple of striving. Promotions, titles, salaries, these are dangled as rewards, but they function more like chains. Each step forward only tightens the rope, demanding another sacrifice of your time, your energy, your soul. Psychologists have documented how overwork is glamorized, how hustle culture normalizes burnout. But you don't need studies, you can feel it in your bones. That tiredness that never really goes away, the one you disguise with coffee and determination, is not a personal weakness. It is the inevitable consequence of worshiping at the altar of endless growth. And what about society as a whole? Entire economies depend on your dissatisfaction. Corporations thrive by teaching you that you are incomplete without their products. The new phone, the new car, the new diet, the new identity, each sold not as a tool, but as a promise of completion. Yet each promise fails, so the cycle can repeat. You become not a citizen, not a human being, but a consumer whose restlessness feeds the machine. This is where psychology intersects with culture most cruelly. Cognitive biases lock you in place. The arrival fallacy convinces you that happiness will come once you reach the next goal. The social comparison bias makes you measure your worth against neighbors, colleagues, strangers online. And every time you scroll through images of curated lives, you feel the subtle sting. I am behind. I am not enough. That sting is not an accident. It is the engine that keeps the wheel spinning. The neuropsychologists say dopamine fires not in the having, but in the wanting. So society ensures you always want. You are kept on the edge of fulfillment, always leaning forward, never resting. And when you finally grasp what you chased, the neurochemical glow fades, replaced by silence, and in that silence, a new craving arises. Do you see the cruelty? You are being played not only by external forces, but by the very chemistry of your brain. And the consequences reach deeper still. Imagine living decades in this state of perpetual hunger. What happens to your spirit? To your sense of meaning? You begin to confuse your identity with your striving. Without the next goal, you feel hollow, directionless. You fear stopping, because stopping feels like annihilation. So you fill your calendar, your mind, your heart with constant noise, terrified of what the silence might reveal. But silence cannot be banished forever. Eventually, in the middle of a sleepless night, or at the edge of a failed dream, it returns. And in that silence, you face the dreadful possibility that you've been running not toward life, but away from it. Away from the terror of simply being. Away from yourself. At a societal scale, the consequences are catastrophic. Entire cultures built on striving turn human beings into instruments, cogs in a machine of production and consumption. Depression, anxiety, burnout, these are not isolated illnesses, but symptoms of a deeper structural disease. You are told to meditate, to practice gratitude, to take a vacation, but these are bandages placed over a wound that keeps reopening. The wound is the very logic of endless progress itself. Have you felt this? That sense of being trapped in a race you never chose, a race whose finish line keeps vanishing? It is not just you. It is all of us, caught in the gravity of a will that knows no rest. And the more you chase, the stronger the gravity becomes, until you can hardly imagine life outside of it. But here lies the great danger. The longer you remain blind to this, the deeper the chains sink into your soul. You begin to forget there was ever an alternative. The prison becomes invisible, the walls painted to look like freedom. You run harder. You smile for photos. You tell yourself you're doing well, yet some unspoken part of you knows the truth. And here is the truth you've been avoiding. If you do not break free, the cycle will consume your entire life. Decades will vanish in striving, and at the end you may realize you never truly lived, you only chased. But how do you break free from a trap that is not outside of you, but within you? How do you step off a treadmill when it is powered by your very will? That is where rebellion begins. What does it mean to rebel against something that lives inside you? Against a force that has disguised itself as your very identity? Rebellion, in this case, does not look like throwing stones at the walls of society, or rejecting every goal, or fleeing to some distant mountain in exile. True rebellion begins in a quieter, more dangerous place, inside your own mind. The first step is the most radical. You must dare to question the holiness of striving itself. For your entire life, you've been told that ambition is virtue, that dreams give meaning, that without goals you are nothing. But ask yourself, has this constant hunger truly brought you closer to peace? Or has it simply multiplied your torment? The rebellion begins when you whisper the forbidden thought, maybe I don't need to keep running. Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a starting point. He warned that the will, this endless craving, cannot be satisfied by feeding it. To keep chasing is like pouring water into a bottomless vessel. The only escape is to recognize the illusion of completion and to step aside from the cycle itself. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills, he observed. In other words, you did not choose this machinery of desire. It chose you. But you can learn to see it for what it is. Think of those moments in your life when striving suddenly lost its grip on you. Perhaps standing before a sunset so vast you forgot yourself. Perhaps listening to music that carried you beyond thought. Perhaps in the arms of someone you loved, when for a fleeting moment you stopped wanting and simply existed. In those rare moments, the wheel of desire paused. You were not chasing, you were being. And wasn't there, in that stillness, a taste of the freedom you've been chasing all along? This is the counterintuitive truth. Freedom does not come from achieving your goals, but from loosening your attachment to them. It comes not by adding more, but by subtracting. You break free by daring to see ambition not as your master, but as a tool you can choose to use or set down. History is filled with examples of such rebels. The Buddha, who abandoned a palace of luxury upon realizing that satisfaction would never come from wealth or power. The Stoics, who trained themselves to desire less, not more, until fortune lost its power over them. Even figures like Diogenes, who scandalized Athens by living in radical simplicity, mocking the city's obsessions with status and possessions. Each, in their own way, stepped off the treadmill and discovered another way of being. You are not being asked to become a monk or to reject all ambition. The rebellion is subtler, yet just as powerful. It is learning to set a goal without making your worth depend on it. It is daring to ask yourself, when you feel that familiar surge of craving, who planted this desire in me? Do I truly want this, or was it given to me by others? Each time you question the origin of your desire, you loosen its hold. And when you succeed, resist the reflex to rush toward the next prize. Linger in the silence. Allow yourself to taste the absence of striving, even if only for a moment. This is not laziness. This is rebellion against the tyranny of endless becoming. The deeper rebellion also requires you to dismantle society's expectations within you. Stop measuring yourself by external standards that were never yours. Begin instead to measure by presence, by depth, by authenticity. Imagine how different your life would feel if success were not a ladder to climb, but a quality of being alive here and now. Nietzsche once urged, become who you are. Notice the paradox. Not become what others want, not become your dreams, but become who you already are, beneath the noise of striving. That is the forbidden truth, hidden in plain sight, that you are already enough, not because of what you achieve, but because you exist. Do you feel how dangerous this realization is? If enough people believed it, the entire machinery of society would tremble. The endless race for more would lose its grip. The corporations, the advertisements, even the culture of comparison would lose their power. To rebel in this way is to reclaim sovereignty over your own will. And this sovereignty is not abstract. It is felt in your body, in your days. The weight begins to lift. The tension in your chest loosens. For the first time, you can breathe without asking whether that breath makes you better. But there is still one final step. Rebellion opens the door, but beyond it lies something even deeper, the ultimate truth that can transform not just your relationship with striving, but your relationship with life itself. The truth that turns rebellion into liberation. Are you ready to see it? What if the greatest freedom is not found in chasing dreams, not even in rebelling against them, but in seeing through the entire illusion of striving itself? What if the truth you've been circling all along is this, that life does not owe you completion, because you were never incomplete to begin with? Schopenhauer believed that to see the world clearly, you must pierce through the veil of the will, the endless hunger that makes existence feel like a constant not yet. The final realization is not simply to slow the wheel, but to step entirely outside of it. To awaken to the possibility that your worth, your being, your life itself, is not a project to be achieved, but a reality to be lived. Imagine standing on a quiet shore at dawn. The waves roll in and out with no ambition, no goal. The sea does not strive to become something more. It is complete in its motion. The sky does not chase a higher sky. It unfolds as it is. For the first time, you recognize you too are like this. You are not a ladder to climb, not a problem to fix, not a future waiting to be earned. You are existence itself already whole, already here. This realization does not mean you stop acting, stop creating, stop pursuing, but it changes the ground on which you stand. You no longer mistake the pursuit for your essence. You no longer hand your soul over to the tyranny of if only. You may still dream, but the dream is now a play, not a prison. You may still set goals, but they no longer define your worth. You move from compulsion to freedom, from craving to choice. Thinkers across time have touched this truth. The mystics called it enlightenment. The Stoics called it tranquility. The Buddhists called it liberation from suffering. Each pointed to the same reality, that fulfillment cannot be found in the restless chase, but in awakening to the fact that you are never lacking in the first place. Can you feel how this changes the weight of your life? No longer a race, but a dance. No longer a prison, but a canvas. No longer an endless confession of deficiency, but an affirmation of presence. What you sought outside was always within you, veiled only by the fog of striving. Of course, this truth is not comfortable. It dismantles the entire logic of your culture, the logic that says your worth must be earned, that you must justify your existence through ceaseless progress. To see through this is to stand outside the crowd, perhaps even against it. But isn't that what freedom has always required? The courage to live by your own light, even when the world worships shadows? And here lies the poetic paradox. Once you no longer need dreams to complete you, you become free to dream in a new way, not as chains of necessity, but as expressions of abundance. You create not to prove yourself, but because creation itself is joy. You love not to escape loneliness, but because love itself is radiant. You live not for the finish line, but for the texture of each step. This is the ultimate truth, that what you have been chasing all your life is not somewhere ahead, but right here, in the stillness of being. The freedom you long for is not the result of reaching your goals, but the release of the belief that you must. So ask yourself now, what would it mean to live without the constant whisper of not enough? What would it mean to breathe without condition, to rest without guilt, to act without the weight of proving? Can you feel how light that would be? How terrifying, and yet how liberating? The philosopher Alan Watts once said, "This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play. Play, this is what life becomes when the prison of striving dissolves. Not meaningless, but overflowing with meaning too vast to be contained by goals." And so, as you stand at the end of this journey, perhaps the greatest question is not, what should I chase next? But how can I live now? Not, what must I become? But who am I when I stop becoming? The answer is not given in words, but in silence and the quiet recognition that you are already whole and always were. Let that recognition linger. Let it unsettle you. Let it breathe inside you like a seed that may one day grow into a different kind of life. Because the truth is not a conclusion, but a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, your search has only just begun.